I think part of the reason people spend in the way that they do as well is linked to that, which is sometimes that behavior, which is also linked to the point about trauma at the start, might result in a savings addiction. I often wonder this because, when I was younger, I had this crazy spending problem. And I've also seen people who don't seem to spend anything and they're just like hoarding capital. You talk about this a bit in the book. Like, what is that equally bad behavior?
Yeah, I think it's equally bad because both of them are the exact same thing, which is money's controlling you. Money should be a tool that you use to become a better version of yourself, to become a happier, more content version of yourself. But when it's controlling your personality, it's no different than like any other addiction where it's forcing you to do things that you otherwise don't want to do. And that can manifest on either end of the side. Either people can't stop spending or they cannot spend enough. A lot of financial advisors will tell you one of the biggest problems that they have are clients who have saved enough money for retirement. Good job. You saved for 40 years. You maxed out your 401k. You did everything you were supposed to. And now you're 70 years old and you have enough money to travel and play golf, and you won't. You won't do it. And I think it's because they become so accustomed to the identity of I'm a saver. Every month I save and every month my net worth goes up. And they cannot bring themselves into switching gears and going in the other direction. And for a lot of those people, the money is in full control over their identity. It's telling them how to live, what to like, what to aspire to, what to enjoy. The money is totally in control of their personality. And it's just as dangerous and just as detrimental as you when you were a teenager of I can't stop spending. And both of those the money is like playing the marionette doll of your life. It's telling you exactly what to do and when to do it.
If I wanted to make a framework to know how to spend my money, where do I start? Do I have to get clear on something? And I guess the other question, which is somewhat linked to this, is this overarching debate around can money make you happy?
Right.
But I'm trying to figure out where do I start? Because one of the things I want to get out of today is I want to have a clearer framework for how to spend my money.
Well, those 2 points that you just brought up, I think, are very related. The first on the point of can money make you happier? The answer is yes, but there's an asterisk next to it that we need to get to. For years, there was a big academic debate of does more money make you happy? Some of the studies showed yes, clearly it does. Studies showed no, it really doesn't. And the academics, the economists were like battling for decades. It's kind of been cleared up in the last couple of years, this last couple of decades with some nuance, which is this. If you are already an unhappy person, if you're already anxious, if you're already depressed, by and large, having more money will not help you, at least that much. It might help you a little bit around the margins. If you start as an unhappy, depressed, anxious person, if you are already a happy, content, joyful, laughing person, having more money will give you a better life. So in either direction, it's just leveraging who you already were. It's not going to change you that much. It's just going to leverage who you already were. Very similar to they say this about power. Like once you gain power in politics or something, it just leverages the personality that you already had. Money is very much like that. And so it's not a panacea in the sense of if you're miserable, if you had more money, it's going to clear up your problems. It can make some of your problems a little bit easier to deal with. But think about it in these stark terms. Let's say you are overweight and unhappy. You hate your job and you're recently divorced and your kids won't talk to you, but you live in a mansion that has a Ferrari in the driveway and you got all kinds of fancy stuff. Is that a good life? If everything else in your life sucked and you woke up every morning going, I got to go to work today. I hate my job. I can't stand my job. I'm lonely. I'm miserable. I'm overweight. I can't sleep. I'm addicted to alcohol, whatever it might be. Of course, it's a terrible life. The house and the car don't matter at all. But you can flip that around and say, let's say you live in a very modest middle-class house and you drive a 10-year-old Honda Civic, but you love your job. You love your coworkers. You have a great relationship with your spouse. Your kids admire you. You have your friends over for a barbecue every Friday night. Materially, it's very modest. You have what you need. You're not impoverished. You're not homeless. You have the food that you want and the shelter that you want, but you would be an absolute maniac to choose the miserable person in the mansion versus the content, happy person in the middle-class house. If your goal is to live a good life, it's psychotic to pick one over the other.
I felt this quite starkly recently because I flew to Cape Town on my own. I've only ever been there with my girlfriend and with other friends. And the first time I've only been there a few times. I've got a house there and it's a very big house. And the first time I came was with my family. Second time it's with my girlfriend and my friends. This time I came on my own. Yeah. And I felt this deep existential feeling, waking up, walking through that house alone, thinking, fuck me, like, it was so clear to me that the point of such a thing is to fill it with people. And you say,
that's what I make this point in the book of like the very simple question, will a big house make you happier?
I think it will make you depressed if it's empty.
Yes.
Because that's how I felt. I was like, I'd rather be in a studio apartment alone than a big house on my own.
Right. I had a similar realization to you a couple of years ago when I took my family and I went to Maui for a vacation. And I love Maui. It's my favorite place in the world. And now I have kids. So I'm building sandcastles with my kids on the beach in Maui. And that I remember thinking like, this is a 10 out of 10. This is peak life for me. Building sandcastles with my kids. Everyone's happy in the sun. But then I had this realization of like, if that's a 10, playing with Legos at home on the living room floor with my kids is like a 9. Like it's really close. Because the realization was what I enjoy is like quality time with my kids. And I think a lot of the reason that people like travel is not because they like getting on an airplane and flying around the world and being jet lagged and cramped into a small hotel. What they like is uninterrupted time away from work, away from all the other stresses of everyday life. That's what they actually enjoy. That's what they like travel. It's not necessarily the location. It's like what the location is doing for you. So the question of will a big house make you happier? It will, to the extent that it makes it easier to have your friends and family over, because your friends and family are the ones who are actually making you happy. And so the answer can be, will a nice house make you happy? The answer can be yes, if you're using it for the right reasons. There was this article in the New York Times, this is probably 10 or 15 years ago. And the article said, 2 things happened to Julia Roberts this week. 1, she won the Academy Award. And 2, she found out her husband was cheating on her. And so the column said, pop quiz, did Julia Roberts have a good week? And it's like, you'd be a fool to say yes. It was probably the worst week of her life, I imagine.
Yeah.
But what we see from the outside was dolled up in a beautiful dress, accepting the highest honor of her career and saying like, wow, that must be an amazing. But it gets back to once you see the full picture, you're like, nah, it's not as easy as it seems.
You say on page 23 of your book, a quote that I loved, show off the inside of your house, not the outside.
Right.
And
because the inside of your house are what your friends and your family are seeing.
Is there like a hack here? Like, is there, because you have all these like internet communities that come up with these like hacks, these other ways to live. They step outside of the matrix and they form their own little cult that are like doing it differently and not abiding by the rules of the quote unquote matrix. I very much feel like most of us are trapped in the matrix.
Yeah.
We're trapped in this like status game, competing against each other, not searching for happiness. Like, what is the hack here? How do I get out of the matrix and what does that look like?
I think if there is a formula that I lay out in the book, and I make the point that like there's no formula for how to spend money. But if I did try to make a formula for a pretty good life, and this extends way outside of money, the formula for a pretty good life is independence plus purpose. If you want to say like, how can I be a happy person? You need to be independent. You need to be able to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, with whom you want to do it with. And you need some kind of purpose that is higher than yourself. And that could be a million different things. It could be friends, it could be family, it could be career, it could be religion, whatever it might be. I think it is very difficult to imagine anyone having a good life without those 2 things. If your entire life and your schedule is dictated by somebody else, of you have to go to this job that you don't like, you have to have a long commute that you don't like, you have to do this when you don't want to do it, it's hard to be happy. And if you don't have any kind of purpose that you're doing it for, it's difficult to be happy. And so the idea that, to me, the best thing to spend money on is independence. And I view it as purchasing. I don't view it as saving money. I view it as purchasing independence. That's how I view it. I feel like I'm buying independence when I save. And so to me, the biggest thing that I spend my money on, and this sounds weird, but is saving. And I view that as buying independence. I view that as every dollar that I save is a little bit more independent than I was before. It's a little bit of my future that I now own and control. And if you're listening to this and you're like, look, I'm not financially independent. I have no possibility of being financially independent. Independence exists on a spectrum. And literally every dollar that you save is a little bit more independent than you were before. If you have $100 in the bank in savings, that can make it so that if you were to lose your job, you have a little bit more flexibility for rent or groceries or whatever it might be that you didn't before. If $1,000, $10,000, any amount that you have is a little bit more independent than you were before. And so when you view one of the cores of living a good life is independence, and any amount of saving money will buy you independence, I think that's a powerful observation for people. And then the purpose part is going to be different for everyone. For me right now in my life, it's being a good father. That's what I want my identity to be. That's my overarching goal in life, is to be a good dad. I think the vast majority of parents will tell you that there was no greater joy, purpose than watching their kids thrive. It can also bring a lot of sorrow and a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of anxiety and a lot of worry that comes along with it. But nothing that I've experienced or any of the other parents that I know would say that anything in their life has come before that it's been a great thing. So we got on this point because the formula is independence plus purpose. For me, the purpose is being a parent. That's not going to be true for everyone.
But you're trading independence for that.
I'm trading, it's internal independence that I'm giving up. I want to sacrifice for my kids. I want to, loyalty to people who deserve your loyalty is a wonderful thing. Loyalty to people who don't deserve your loyalty sucks. And so if you're giving your loyalty to a company that doesn't respect you, that sucks. That's terrible. Loyalty to people who deserve it is a very fulfilling thing. So my kids deserve my loyalty.
How did they earn that loyalty?
Just by being my kids. And there's some days where I feel like they don't appreciate it, of course. But I think that tends to be true. People get into problems when they are loyal to people or organizations or political affiliations who don't deserve the loyalty. That's when it gets dangerous.
Do you think the promise of independence and freedom has a secret, hidden, dark trade-off that people don't talk about? Because there's this culture right now of be your own boss and stand on your own 2 feet. And when you think about what makes humans happy, it seems to be collective things. It seems to be actually, in your case, as you're saying, dependence. Your kids depend on you. Yes. And in some ways, you depend on them. All the things that seem to me, having my friends at my house made me happier than being in the house alone.
Right.
But the public narrative is all about optimizing for freedom, whatever that means. And really more so optimizing for independence, not depending on someone else. Yeah. But when you look at the people that seem to be the most unhappy, they seem to be the most independent.
Right. Because if you picture someone living in a cabin by themselves in the middle of Montana with no one around them or whatever it might be.
No family, no pets, freelance work on a laptop on their own, in a glass box in Dubai, no big obligations, not in a church.
But back to the formula, independence plus purpose. Those people have no purpose.
Oh, yeah.
So I think, yes, everyone is going to be, I'm dependent on my wife, my kids. There is dependency there, but I'm choosing. I chose her as a spouse. I chose to have kids. And so I still did it on my terms. And so you're never going to be, or I think you don't want to be 100% independent in the sense that you don't rely on anyone and no one relies on you, because then you have no purpose. It's choosing who you want. I think you're not independent if you have to be loyal to a job that you hate, but you have to have it because it's the only job you got, and you have to do it. And you have to pay this exorbitant rent on an apartment that you don't even enjoy that much. Those are dependents on things that you don't want. But I want to be dependent on my family because that gives me purpose.
It's like the independence to make the choice, I guess.
To make the choice of who you're going to be dependent on, right?
Got you. And on this earlier point, you were talking about saving, and that your favorite form of spending is saving.
Yeah.
Someone's listening now. How much money do you think they should, at a minimum, have saved?
If you try to get technical about it, I would say, what are the odds that at some point in your life, you're going to lose your job and not be able to find another job for 6 months? The odds are not bad that will happen to you at some point. Not very comfortable to think about. Maybe it's already happened to you already, but the odds that at some point that will happen are pretty good. And therefore, if you were to say, look, a good measure of some level of higher end independence, not a low level of independence, but a medium level of independence is I could keep myself going for 6 months. Now, for a lot of people, that's a daunting task, and it's okay. You're probably not going to achieve that when you're 18. It's going to take some savings to get there. But that is a level at which you can exhale to a degree that most people have never been able to do before, of there's going to be some bad stuff happening in your life. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to be okay. And for most people, for most of history, it was there's bad things going to happen to you and you're not going to be okay. It's going to be very traumatic. And one of the important things there is when you lose that job, the ability to go find a good job, even a better job, where you want, doing what you want with the people who you like working with is very important. If you don't have any savings, you're going to have to, by default, pick the very first job that you can come across, even if it's a terrible job in a location that you hate, doing something you hate, working with people you don't like. And so the flexibility to give yourself time to find a job that is a little bit easier and better for you. That is the purpose of savings.
And that goes back to your point about independence, which is you want to, building up those savings is building up the independence or the freedom to make a choice about who you work with.
Right.
If the worst were to happen, you don't have to necessarily go get a job at, some awful place.
Some terrible place.
You talk about jealousy in the book as well. And I was reading some stats that, they're quite funny stats, but they say that essentially that if you win the lottery, the probability of your neighbor going bankrupt increases.
Right. It's an amazing statistic, right?
So what's happening there?
Well, you're looking at your neighbor who won the lottery, and your neighbor probably bought a vacation house, bought a new car, sending their kids to private school, whatever it might be. And you watching that are like, I need that for myself. It's unfair that they have it and I don't. And I'm going to go do any reckless financial decision to get that. So much of what we think is normal, our definition of success, is what other people around us have. And so if you are watching your neighbor live a better life than you, then all of a sudden your definition of a good life is what they're doing, and you will do some reckless things to get it. I think that's what happens. And so one of the takeaways there is like, be careful who you socialize with, because you're going to anchor to them as a baseline level of success and happiness. Be very careful with what you do and who you look up to and who you aspire to. I grew up in Lake Tahoe, California, and this was before tech money, when it was not a wealthy area. It is now, because all the tech money from San Francisco came up. But Tahoe in the 90s and early 2000s was just out in the woods. And, you could buy a house for nothing, and most people in town didn't have any money. And then I went to college in Los Angeles, where there is a lot of wealth. There are high expectations, and there are Lamborghinis and Rolls Royces and whatnot. And one of my observations was people were happier in Tahoe. And I think the reason why is because the definition of success in Tahoe back then was a 2-bedroom house and a pickup truck. That was success. In Los Angeles, the definition of success was a mansion and a Bentley. And so it was easier for people in Tahoe to be like, I'm good. I check the boxes. Like, look, I'm successful. Look at my tiny little house and my beat up pickup truck. That's success, right? And so that was like, be careful who you socialize with, because you're going to anchor to their level of success.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.